What is good, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Now, if you've been following along with Godot recently, you'll know that a few months ago, Godot announced a very cool collaboration with Google and The Forge. Now, if you don't know what The Forge is, essentially, they are an organization or a team that basically prides themselves in building custom game engines, or basically optimizing your current game engine that you have, or essentially just helping you extend your game engine or add some tool developments to it. So, yeah, and they've recently also been working on a recent mobile release, with Activision and all of that Call of Duty stuff. Basically what they did here in the statement, they say that they've added the Vulkan support for the engine, and they've also added the Android support and made the engine a little bit more mobile friendly. Now, if you guys are familiar with Warzone Mobile, then you should know that that game really runs really good on iOS. However, there are some complaints on Android side of things with the overheating issue and all of that stuff. However, given their expertise in this field, I feel like what they've been working on here lately will basically benefit what Godot engine is heading towards. So yeah, so back to this article right here. So Godot engine basically announced that they've partnered with Google and The Forge to bring some helpful performance optimization to the Vulkan backend, and this will primarily benefit users targeting Vulkan capable mobile devices, right? And this collaboration between Google and The Forge basically was supposed to last several months, and then several months later, fast forward to the present day, which is on the 19th of April 2024. This article was released by Clay John again, and it basically states, our collaboration with Google and The Forge has achieved its original goal of improving performance in the Vulkan backend and enhancing our Vulkan API usage. The work started in mid-November, and I have to say, the last few months went by very fast. And honestly speaking, I also agree with this statement, because if you know anything about graphics API, especially the Vulkan API, you'll know that there is quite a lot that needs to go into that to essentially have all your systems working properly, especially optimized for mobile. So given that they did it in such a short span of time, it really shows their commitment at helping Godot achieve great things. So yeah, so here's the list of the improvements and the highlights. So basically what they've done is they've enabled the usage of unified memory architecture buffers when available. Now, if you don't know what a UMA is, which is the unified memory architecture, it's essentially just the CPU and the GPU basically sharing the same bank of memory, right? If you know that the M1 and the M2 and M3, Apple's new ARM chips essentially just have everything unified. You have the CPU and the GPU on one chip, right? And this allows your system to essentially be more efficient and fast, and that's why you get all these crazy speeds on M1s and M2s and M3s recently on the new chips on Apple. So essentially, because this is a new architecture, they've basically added support for that within the within the engine, basically to make use of those buffers whenever they are available. So since Microsoft is also adding ARM support to Windows, so it only makes sense that these features also just become readily available, future-proofing essentially new architecture as well. So they've also added the Android thermal API support. Now this is where the Google expertise also came in, and if you don't know what the thermal API is used for, well, essentially when you're gaming on Android and you're basically running one of these AAA titles or a game that's heavily reliant on the graphics API, on the graphics and the GPU, your device will tend to overheat, right? And when that happens, your device basically just sort of like hits a bottleneck and it becomes slow and the performance becomes slow, and when that happens, you basically start lagging and stuff like that. So the thermal API essentially is from Google, which basically just allows you to monitor this thermal state of the device, which then allows you to predict how long the device can basically maintain the current performance level without overheating, which is pretty cool stuff. And now Godot has that within the engine, and I believe you guys will be able to make use of that as well. And then also what they've added is that they've basically replaced large push constants with dynamic uniform buffers. I won't get into this. However, other optimizations that they did here was basically Vulkan related, which are the descriptor set and the descriptor set batching, and basically optimizing the swap chain operations. as well. And also they've integrated another Google library, in this case called swampy frame pacing, which essentially just enables OpenGL and the Vulkan games basically to achieve smooth rendering and correct frame pacing on Android. Again, going with that trend of basically allowing games to run smoothly and efficiently on Android devices. So this project has been concluded, and basically they've tested two 3D scenes using the Google Pixel 7 and a Samsung S23, and then depending on the project and the device, they saw basically a 10 to 20% reduction in GPU frame times. And since mobile devices are currently heavily GPU bottlenecked in 3D scenes, this translates directly to a 10 to 20% frame time improvement. And you can basically track these tables within the PR they've also listed in this article. And when you click on that PR, essentially it will take you to the PR on GitHub, and you'll basically be able to view the table with the data. And you can see that they basically tested two scenes. One is basically the third-person shooter, and then the other one is the sun template, and you guys can download these two zips there if you want to. But looking at the improvements here, like if you look at the third-person shooter unoptimized version, the frame rate time, or the frame time, basically just ran at 37 milliseconds, right? Unoptimized, and then optimized, it ran about 36 milliseconds. Now that's a very small improvement, right? But then if you look at the sun temple unoptimized version, you have 29 milliseconds, and then when you look at the optimized version, you have 26 milliseconds. Again, a slight more a bigger improvement there. However, if you look at these numbers, generally speaking, they're not that huge, right? They're not that huge jumps. Here they're still the same for the CPU frame time, the GPU frame time, and then the CPU frame time, they still in the 3.5s closely milliseconds there. But when we're talking about mobile, these improvements are fair enough, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, but then at the end of the day, they are improvements and they are optimizations, and these optimizations will definitely benefit the engine in the long term. And it just shows to what great lengths that the Godot engine is basically taking to essentially make sure that games essentially will run smoothly on Android and mobile devices such as iOS. So the commit is here, and all the commits that were done by the Forge and Google, you guys can basically just check them out here and check out the code and what's changed and what's new, but I won't really dive into that in this video. So when will we basically get this? Will we get this in Godot 4.3, 4.4, 4.5? Well, we're not sure, but all we know is that the branch essentially will not be merged as is. However, there will be cherry picking safe commits to basically roll out within the upcoming Godot version. So maybe you might get a little bit of this in Godot version 4.3, a little bit of this 4.4, 4.5, etc., all the way to the future Godot versions. So yeah, so what does this really mean in terms of like where Godot engine is essentially heading? Well, if you look at all these commits right here, and given that 4.3 is still coming and all of the commits that have been done on that version, it just pretty shows much that Godot engine is only basically directed at improving and basically becoming one of the standard game engines out there in the world in the coming years. So if you guys really want to support this game engine, I would really recommend that you give it a chance, that you really try it, and then just play around with it, because it's really getting good year by year, month by month, week by week. The team is just awesome. So if you guys enjoy this type of content and would like to see more videos of this, do definitely hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you guys on the next video. And do hit me up in the comment sections below and what you think about this new collaboration and what they've done. And yeah, let's just have a little chat. Cheers.